Hello, and welcome to this video where I go over a deep dive of the Sublime MRR strategy. And before I get into the strategy, I just wanted to give you a brief overview of why I created the strategy in the first place. So, I wanted to experience a state of life where I was free to travel around the world and I was free to explore all of the great things which come with this gift of life, uh, but without having to worry about money ever, right? So basically, like early retirement, but uh, with my youth in place, and also with a kind of social safety net or support in place, because I did not just want to travel around the world. I wanted to have this freedom to be able to go to any country which I want, and be able to, meet uh, a certain group of friends there, be able to access things which you just can't access as a foreigner with a lot of money, and just explore this playground called planet Earth that we just happen to find ourselves within. Uh, but to do that, there were different ways in which I could approach this problem of money. The traditional one is to just, go through formal education, get a 9 to 5 job, and then move up the career ladder with promotions, bonuses, while investing some of that money into real estate and maybe like into your friend's startup or maybe into other assets like crypto, or maybe like traditional commodities like certain fixed deposits, certain um, life insurance funds, and hopefully just play the game of like figuring out uh, the investing side of things while managing the hassle of a full-time job, which might not be something which I feel most called to do as my higher purpose, but it still pays the bills. So that's the route which I did not want to take. And so the alternative to that was to go down the startup route. And the startup route was also something which eventually, you know, I realized is not as freeing as I would like it to be, right? It's just something which was great, let's say 10 years ago, but whenever something becomes great, it provokes envy, provokes hopes and dreams of a lot of people. And then eventually it starts getting saturated and then eventually starts getting standardized. And eventually people drift away from the truth of why that field was established to begin with. And it all becomes one giant uh, extension of a formal system. So I just wasn't all that comfortable in the startup environment, and I realized that it wasn't the kind of absolute freedom which I was chasing to truly pursue my career objectives, to pursue my personal objectives, to pursue my personal scientific theories and like mathematical frameworks, and to do so, carefree while also enjoying life while I'm at it. Uh, so that wasn't something which appealed to me in that way. And then the final frontier, or the final answer which I received was the internet. And so the internet is something where you can set up these systems which sort of generate money for you passively without having to do a lot of work in terms of maintaining it, in terms of managing a huge team. You can really become a one person business and a one person army as a consequence. And so that was like a clear sort of answer for me. And I was like, well, I'm going to be a full stack internet entrepreneur, right? And then I spent a lot of time mastering the entire stack, not just, uh, you know, app development, not just website development, but, digital marketing, the back end things of like hiring and building a team, uh, deep tech as well, and I spent a lot of time just going over that. And I realized that uh, although building an online business is a lot of hard work, and although you have like all of this benefits of it taking off, and you're getting a lot of upside of like the startup, uh, the founder sort of grind, but without a lot of the downside in terms of like being restrained by a lot of investors, a lot of vested incentives, having to deal with a lot of people who you don't want to deal with. uh, I realized that that's still not as perfect of a solution, because although you can sort of create a lot of apps and websites, you eventually will have to uh, manage a lot of the customer support, a lot of customer facing side of things, in order to be able to uh, generate money and do so sustainably while you're traveling around the world and while you're enjoying life. And again, it's not as easy as it sounds, right? Because you have to be constantly privy to shifting trends uh, online. If you're like a drop shipper, if you're a YouTuber, if you're like uh, creating like an app or website, you always have to sort of be on top of the market. And so that eventually led me to trading, right? And the financial world, because I was like, well, if my objective is just to have a lot of money coming in without having to do much, then the clear answer for me is that, well, basically I'm looking for early retirement, right? So what should I do, right? And so the answer is in the financial world, where they have this thing called interest, which is basically like free money coming in against your main money, and that's how the world works, right? And so basically, that got me interested in finance, and so my entry into finance was mostly in cryptocurrency. And so then I tried out different things, like from liquidity pools to decentralized lending, uh, to a bunch of other sort of crypto related stuff like proof of stake and proof of work mining, mining over my laptop, mining certain cryptocurrencies to generate that passive income stream. And then that sort of took me down this rabbit hole where I ended up owning a lot of crypto, and then the market ended up tanking against me, and a lot of the crypto suddenly like was losing a lot of value, and I was like, this doesn't make sense. I thought this was financial freedom, not like something which I need to stress out about like all the time, right? Like uh, s- but it became that, because even if I had money in liquidity swaps, I had to constantly be on track of, keep track of that. I had to constantly sort of move my money around if I'm liquidity mining. And then, I was like, this doesn't make sense, so let me just figure out trading. And so that's what got me into trading, because I was like, well, if I have a lot of crypto, then I might as well learn how to manage it properly. And so that is what eventually led me to TradingView, the world of trading bots, and I sort of, ended up discovering this open source script on TradingView, and I was like, well, this is going to solve all of my problems and issues. And then I gave money to that bot, obviously, like not all of my crypto, I just gave a certain portion of it, and it ended up performing horribly, right? And I ended up losing a lot of that money, and I was like, well, it suits me well, for trusting an open source script, right? Because anyone with a profitable strategy, anyone with a machine which makes genuine money, is probably not going to share it for free on the internet, right? And so then that led me down this rabbit hole where I ended up developing and experimenting with building a lot of my own trading bots and a lot of my own trading strategies, and some of them ended up becoming quite profitable, some of them ended up becoming quite volatile, some of them were just dead ends. And over the course of building it, I eventually moved from the crypto world to the financial world, because I realized that although crypto is amazing with a lot of things, uh, when it comes to liquidity, and when it comes to the big money, uh, traditional finance still has a lot going for it, right? For example, like discovered NQ futures, and the liquidity of NQ futures is like 10 times that of Bitcoin. So there's a lot of money in traditional finance, and they figured out a lot of things which crypto still needs to figure out in terms of leverage, in terms of like options and things like that. Very complicated, complex financial instruments. And so, with that said, eventually the dream which I had of being able to turn my laptop and cell phone into a money generating machine, which doesn't require me to do a lot in terms of maintaining it, was slowly starting to come true, right? And as this started to come together, I discovered a few strategies which were very profitable, but they weren't like sustainable in terms of like monthly recurring revenue, right? Because although you can create trading bots which make a lot of money, uh, we as humans we live month by month, right? Because your bills are due every single month, or your bills are due every single year, or every single quarter. However, you've decided to plan it out, and sometimes if your bot makes a big killing, it's great. Uh, but then if you're going to survive off that killing, and you don't know when the next big market cycle is going to come, and you're going to make a lot of money, then that is still not absolute freedom, right? That's still not the freedom which I was chasing. And so then I started getting into bots which uh, would not produce like insane returns, but would produce consistent returns, right? And that's what got me it started with the Sublime MRR series, because what I wanted with the Sublime MRR series was basically create a bot which could uh, take care of my monthly cash flow, so that when it comes to the problem of surviving, or the problem of being, right, when it comes to just covering the monthly bills such as fooding, clothing, shelter, travel, maybe a bit extra as well, then the bot would be able to sustain my lifestyle without me having to do a lot, right? And so then I created the Sublime MRR strategy. But now, after creating the strategy, I realized that, well, um, even if I sort of like blow this up, right, and put like millions behind it, and I'm making like six figures every single month using this bot, it just makes me a rich guy with a money machine, right? So that's still not absolute freedom, because immediately you're going to be a target for a lot of people, right? A lot of people who try to rob you, who try to steal the strategy off you. Uh, Humans can be very desperate, right? And even if I'm sort of taking all of this money and I'm going around uh, traveling the world, making friends with other high level people, it's still like going to be on a very professional level, right? It's not going to be something which is more sort of intimate or family like, right? And when it comes to a close group of friends, I've not had uh, that good of an experience, because usually envy enters the picture, or usually, you know, there's some girl involved, and then, and guys end up like changing face, or changing priorities. And so that brought me to like another sort of crossroads, and I was like, well, uh, you solved money, right? But now how are you going to solve the people side of the puzzle, right? And then I realized that, well, something which I didn't want to do was like, create like primary market businesses, which uh, I had to run, right? Remember I told you how I started my journey trying to figure out how to make money online using traditional internet businesses like drop shipping or mobile apps and things like that. And that's basically in taking, or like, exchanging value for capital in the primary market, right? Because you're dealing with other people, you're dealing with business to customers, you're dealing with business to business. Um, but then the secondary market is like when you're dealing with like just traders, right? It's just pure instruments. And secondary market is where I felt most comfortable. Um, but then I realized that, you know what? I think the best way to sort of like tackle the issue of people and the issue of being is to, you know, create a very strong support network around me of people who I helped, become more financially strong, and who are sort of aligned around the same idea which I have of being able to sort of turn my laptop and cell phone into a money generating machine, and then be able to enjoy that wealth across the globe, across any country. You go to any country, you'd always find your tribe of people. uh, you'll always be able to access the best events, to go to the best place, and have the least amount of social friction. If you get sort of caught up in any trouble, if someone is trying to rob you, if someone is trying to hold you hostage, you'll be able to have like contacts and the right people to call. If your country suddenly goes into war, and then there's flights which have been blocked, you'll be able to on board a private jet and save your family and like leave. Like that's like a different aspect of things, and people don't usually um, you know get give you like access to that kind of network just because you met them over some networking event and you just got along, right? There has to be some kind of vested incentive. There has to be sort of some common ground to stand on. And so that's when I thought that, what, I have the strategy which is like kind of like very stable, and it produces like market beating returns, right? It beats like every single asset class out there when it comes to, taking the money which you have made and parking it to generate monthly cash flow against it, right? So why don't I just or like, sorry, why don't I just sell this strategy or like open this strategy up to the world and then create a community around it of like-minded people who, firstly benefit from the strategy financially, and then secondly, use the strategy as an excuse to get into an exclusive club, where people share their experience, and then people are on the same level as them, and then, using that, why don't I take what I want and then package it up and then outsource it as a product into something which they would want as well, and then end up creating a network effect of people across the globe who are united around this urge to have this experience of absolute freedom while still in this human form, and just create a company around it. Why not? And so that brings me to magic money. And so magic money is exactly that, right? It is taking these strategies and opening it up to the world and selling it to the world, uh, to attract the right people around it to be able to um, create a very strong community of people who are uh, not just making money like on autopilot, uh, but they're making more money than what they would have made in any other asset class which they could have parked their money in, which they could have parked their capital in, while also like getting access to exclusive services and an exclusive network and an exclusive sort of club around which they can take care of like the other social side of things once money is no longer an object, to then enjoy the life, reach the pinnacle of this human form, and just you know be held in this game of life, right? Do not just have financial safety nets, but social safety nets, emotional safety nets, psychological safety nets, uh, as well as like all the sort of right tools which you need to be able to have maximum agency and maximum ability in this game that we are caught up in, between life and death. So that's what this is, and that's what this is all about. That's what the strategy is all about. And so, with that said, let's like thank you for listening for 18 minutes to get a background on this. But now let's just dive back into the core strategy, and I'll just show you what exactly it is that I've come up with, right? So remember I told you that I wanted to pursue, I started pursuing trading bots, but then, like the thing with bots is that, although you can make some which are very profitable, it's very hard to make bots which are consistent, right? And it's harder to make bots which are consistent on a recurring basis, like a monthly recurring basis, or like a weekly basis, or like a daily basis. Uh, and so after a lot of trial and error, this is what I came up with, right? And the name of the strategy is SublimeMRR, uh, for monthly recurring revenue. And so if you look at the strategy, you can see that it hasn't had a single losing month since 2021, which is like the default backtesting data which gets loaded up on TradingView when you sort of load up any strategy on it. And so if you look at the performance of the strategy, you would see that it has a very high win rate. It has an 87.69% win rate, and against the capital which you need, which in this case, is the minimum amount of capital required to not blow up your account, right? So if you look at like this max equity drawdown, right? So this is the maximum the capital has sort of like gone down in value. So like a drawdown is like, from this point where you have money to this point where, your losses have made it so that you have less money, right? And so this decrease in value is what we call a drawdown, right? And so the maximum drawdown you can get from the strategy when I sort of created in TradingView was 976 thousand, right? So close to a million, right? That's why I sort of put the initial capital to be a million, so that it's very unlikely that the account would ever get blown up in any way, right? So with that said, if you look at the strategy, you'd see that it has these sort of like these sharp drops and then kind of consistent rise. And that's because although the strategy is like it has a high win rate, it still has losses, right? It's not like no loss in any way, but it can just recover those losses quite well, right? And so if you look at the buy and hold, right, you'd see that um, you'd kind of have like a decent buy and hold return. So this is like the market's return if you just held the Nasdaq index of like the top 100 tech stocks, right? But then if you had the strategy trading that index, then you can already see that your profits are way, way above market returns, right? You would have received all of this profit. Now, if you sort of do a deep test of the strategy, you would see that. Um, so again, like this is 1999 because I'm trying to exhaust the backtesting data. You would see that across like a deep time horizon, this edge still holds true, right? At least in TradingView, right? You can see that across deep time horizon, which is the entirety of the backtesting data, uh, still the maximum drawdown was, around close to a million, like not above a million. And you can see that, the strategy has outperformed like buy and hold almost like, throughout the entire existence of its history. And then you can see that it has remained profitable, around 70% profitable across like a deep time analysis. And again, this is like very rare, because when you build trading strategies, they usually break down when you do a deep time analysis. It goes into 50% or like 30%. At that point, it's just probabilities. But the very fact that it's 70% across the entire history of its backtesting data means that this is not fluke, right? This is an actual edge. It's an actual strategy, right? It's not something which is hacked together, right? It has some form of sentience and some form of intelligence running it behind the scenes. Otherwise, why would 7 out of every 10 trades be profitable across the entire history of its backtesting data? And in the modern era, as you can see from here, trade 489, in the modern era, why would the strategy have like 8.7 or like or almost close to like 9 out of every 10 trades be profitable, right? There has to be something governing it. And so at that point, I was like, okay, this is kind of real, right? And so if you look at this 480, so that's around end of 2016, start of 2017. That's when the strategy like really took off, right? And as you can see from before 2017, you had like these jagged curves, and so we don't want that. We don't want strategies sort of like going and having these like massive drawdowns where it ends up like losing a lot of your money, because it's okay, if you started off here, right? But if you started off here, then this one would actually be starting off here, right? And so you would end up losing around like close to $1 million, and then you'd have to wait years to sort of make it back, right? So that's why we don't want a lot of these drawdowns, right? And as you can see, like from 2017 onwards, those drawdowns are very few, and even when they happen, they easily recovers from it. And it's not like the recovery, for example, from here, it took until like a few years to sort of like go back to this point, right? So In the modern era, strategy seems to perform quite well, and then you have these kind of jaggedy edges and things like that. And so that was the case in TradingView, right? And as soon as I discovered the strategy in TradingView, I was like, well, you know what? Like, how can I be 100% sure that this is something real, right? That this is a real edge and that it actually works? Because it might just be that TradingView is dealing with like a different data stream, right? It might just be like TradingView might have some flaws or something unique, which is like quirky to it, uh, which makes it like produce such exceptional results, right? Like maybe uh, it's some gimmick or some glitch, and then as soon as they put this in the live market with like real money, something horrible is going to happen, and then all of these fancy numbers are just going to go out of the window, right? So that's when I sort of set out to like really prove that this is real, at least to myself before anyone else. And the way I did that was by translating the strategy into NinjaTrader, right? And so NinjaTrader is a completely different platform with a completely different programming language, a completely different data stream, but like obviously data stream to the same uh, asset, but a different provider, right? So you have a different platform with a different provider to the same sort of instruments data stream and a completely different programming language, right? It just happens to be the fastest programming language to exist on the planet. So uh, that is basically what I did, in terms of like translation, right? I just took the strategy in TradingView and I translated it perfectly in the NinjaTrader so that the logic remains intact, but the entire infrastructure is completely different. And guess what happened? As you can see, this graph from 2017. This is the daily trades. Uh, the strategy has like literally just had like a few losing trades, right? If you look at the analysis here, if you look at the summary, you'd see that since 2017 it has a like 92.13% win rate. And that's the thing about like NinjaTrader is that you can do things in NinjaTrader which you cannot do in TradingView, right? Because of which you can create strategies which are way more complex than what you can do in TradingView. And so I basically took the TradingView version, translated it, and when I did translate it for the first time, it was like around 80 or something percent, but then I made the strategy even better, brought in like some proprietary like code and proprietary like edge cases and some secret sauce basically. And I made the strategy like even better in terms of its performance. And as you can see in NinjaTrader, it's like different platform, different programming language, different data provider, and it's still producing exceptional results, right? Which means that this is a real edge. And so if you look at profit per month, it averages out to like 56,000 every single month, and that's against 1.2 million. As I said, like I made some modifications in the NinjaTrader version to make it even better, and I also made the cushion capital like a little bit more than what's required, just to make sure that your account is like never blown up, right? And so this is where we are right now, right? So this is a real edge. It's proven itself, and then after the NinjaTrader translation worked, I sort of proved it in the live market. And you can go over our YouTube channel and you would see that there are videos not just of 1 month where I'm proving it in the live market, but like like every single month, I try to upload a video which shows that the strategy is real and it's performing well in the live market. And so you can see all of that proof there. And so basically what I'm trying to communicate to you is that this is a real opportunity, right? It's not something which I made up. I mean, I did make it up, right? But I'm not in the sense that it's a scam or like it's like me selling snake oil in terms of like a made up fantasy, right? It's like a invention. It's a creation, right? It's an act of expression that is real. So with that said, it seems great, right? Like you look at this NinjaTrader version since 2017, it's not had like a single losing year, and the average you make every single month, that's around like 56K. And so after paying us the subscription fee, which is around like 30% of your profits if you're on the monthly plan, If you buy the lifetime license, that's just 20% of your profit. So you have an 80-20 split. 80-20 split. You're left with like around 36, $37,000 every single month, and so $37,500 in terms of averages. And you can then, you know, have months which are more profitable, months which are less profitable, but eventually it averages out. As you can see here, you made like $135,000, six figures in a month. But then there are certain months which you make only 22,000, right? And that's also something else about the strategy which I had to mention is that it has a lower limit, right? So it's very unlikely that you'll make anything below 22,000, uh, or like whatever this limit is for like the tiered version of the strategy which you're working on. So that's also something which I forgot to mention is that I created like different versions of this for different capital brackets, right? And also for people who are skeptical about it, who think that this is snake oil or who think that this is too good to be true and don't want to risk a lot of capital, then you can take like, the starter version and then you can, eventually build up trust and therefore you can trust it with more capital until you eventually get to this original version here. So with that said, it's all great, right? So if you look at the monthly chart here, it's like, wow, it's amazing, right? This is the holy grail, I've solved money for life, and everything is going to be great. But now let's go back to that thing which I mentioned earlier in like TradingView about like drawdowns, right? So we were like, here, and we were like, well, you know, if we hadn't made money before and then this happened, then we would be in the red, right? So that's basically what a drawdown is. Um, and so, what if you do a deep test, deep back test of the strategy? So you go 2000, right? Again, Ninjatrader doesn't have data which starts from 2000. It just starts from 2006, but I'm just doing this to create like maximum possible backtesting range. And let's say I hit run. Then you see something interesting, right? It's like, oh wow, oh well, oh shit, it's in red here. It goes in red, and then finally it recovers, and you have like bam, a losing month because it's in the monthly, and then you have like another losing month. And so if you look at here, oh my god, we lost like $179,000, right? Which is like a lot, right? And so if you actually do this in the starter strategy, I think you'd be able to see clearly like how uh, the strategy had like a big loss. Yeah. So this shows it a lot more clearly. So if you go to monthly here and you're like, well, strategy make good money, fine, one losing month, and then boom, suddenly, you lost like so much money, right? And then it took you like almost like a year to make up for it and then maintain a steady growth trajectory, right? And so I guess this is just part of the game, right? Sometimes you win, sometimes you lose, and everything in life comes with risk, and you always got to like play your cards right, but sometimes you're going to be punched in your face and you're going to be knocked down, and I guess that's just life, right? Not quite, we obviously that's true, like there are going to be losses and stuff, but we at Magic Money don't believe in just taking a punch to your face and not being able to fight back. And so, as such, I told you in Ninjatrader, it's a much more powerful platform, so you can do a lot of crazy things. And so, we have created a very proprietary uh, risk management system, which allows you to make it so that the loss did not even happen in the grand scheme of things, right? And so, this is what the chart looks like after you use recovery in it, which means that if you are that unlucky fellow or girl or whoever who buys the strategy and end up like buying the strategy here, and then the very next month you're expecting profits, but boom, you hit with a loss, right? Or you buy it here and you're very happy that, oh, you bought the best strategy ever, but then boom, you hit with a huge loss, right? Like around like 30% of like your risk capital here. You'd be very angry. You'd go all over Twitter, you'd go all over the internet, and you just say that this is a scam, we are horrible people, like you lost your money, blah blah blah, you end up feeling anxious. Hopefully not, hopefully if you're using this, then you're using risk capital and you have a certain degree of level-headedness to be able to purchase this in the first place. But I'm just saying, in a worst case scenario, if you're very emotional or unstable in some regards, then the strategy has you covered, right? Like, it's eventually going to make up for the loss, and it's going to be like nothing ever happened, right? And that's one of the recovery features. And so if you see that here, you see that without the recovery, you made like this loss and you have like these dents, right? But if you switch on the recovery, then um, guess what? It's like it never happened, right? You just keep accumulating wealth. You just keep growing your pot. And so you can see that maybe in the past, like in deep time, you have like these losses and it takes some time to recover from it, even for the recovery feature. But I wouldn't, be too concerned about that, right? Because of the way different providers handle deep time data. Because a lot of providers, like get this data, different. Like for example, like the TradingView data is a bit different, and some other providers have a different data. And also, like the market was like very different back then. But just in case you're like too concerned that, oh my god, it had like a losing month in the entire history of its backtesting data, well, guess what? If you view this chart yearly, you would see that in the entire history of its backtesting data, it starts from the 1st of January 2006, it's not had a single losing year. And again, this is not some backtesting gimmick, right? You can take all of these numbers and you can verify it via playback testing in NinjaTrader, and you can actually verify it by live market testing, right? You can constantly see that we post like the live market trades in the YouTube channel, and the live market profits are usually more than what you're seeing here in the backtester, right? And this is not some fancy candle or gimmick. You can go to a website and you can read an article on scam bots, right? To basically see how people scam you when they try to show you like NinjaTrader results, right? Because they use like special candles, they use like special exits. Uh, but this is all on candle close, right? It's on the close price of the candle, and it's just a simple entry, simple exit. There is no trail stop, there's no like stop loss stop, nothing complex, right? This is as basic as it gets. Uh, which, if anything, should be good news for you, which means the complex portions are, absolute monsters. Wink, wink. Don't want to spoil, the previews and the future launches. But yeah, so most basic strategy ever. You buy on the close price, sell on the close price. It hasn't had a single losing year. Again, this is like you can disregard this as this is like back testing data glitch. If you look at the strategy here, it's not having a single losing year. If you look at the strategy here, look at the yearly one. Again, it's only when you're scaling up the contracts, that it sort of seems like it's initializing it with like a bit of a loss. But you shouldn't be too concerned about that because maybe it did not initialize. If it included the 2005 data, then this would be in profit, right? That's what I mean. So. Um, so yeah, that's the strategy. And the worst case scenario which can happen for you is that you buy the strategy and then you are unlucky enough to be uh, here when you bought it, right? And so you end up like taking a big loss, uh, like 30-40% hit, and then suddenly the strategy makes it back, in like 2 trades, right? So that's the worst that can happen. And again, the risk capital is designed in such a way to help you cover from it. Or you can be here, you can take a loss and then you can have the recovery feature recover it for you over the course of the next few months as if nothing happened. But as of now, as of testing it from 2017, it's not had a single losing month. And I doubt that it's going to have like, crazy losing months in the future. And I'm not saying that out of arrogance. I'm just saying that because the strategy is sold on a subscription basis, right? And so when you subscribe to it, you're subscribing to improvements for it, which is ongoing, right? And you're subscribing to access to this community, uh, which is made out of very smart people and very successful people, and so everyone would be watching it like a hawk. And something else which I don't want to spoil for you in this video is that we actually already well underway with a more modified version of it, which overcomes even the slight areas of weaknesses, and uh, almost doubles your profit, right? But I don't want to spoil it for you. And even if we publish that, you'll have to buy this kind of starter series to be able to access it, just like you got to buy a Chiron to buy a Bugatti Divo, right? And so with that said, I just wanted to do the due diligence again. And so now let's go the tabs. Um, yeah, so this is the official website, matchmoney.cash. You can see all of these results in more details here. And again, like, when you click on the product, uh, if you want to like verify that, these trades are actually happening, or if you want to like check out the TradingView version, to see that this is not a gimmick, and that whatever I showed you is not like sort of altered screenshots or made up like, I don't know, graphics or like, anything, or like AI generated or whatever crazy idea you think, right? Again, scroll down here and then you can go and check out the TradingView version, which is hosted on the internet, and you'd see that it's actual TradingView domain, it's actual strategies, the actual results. And so with that said, if you want to see how the strategy performance compares to every other place to park your money, now that you're kind of convinced, that this is real and it's not just something which I am selling as snake oil, and you're going to be met with some nasty surprise and you're going to end up losing all of your money. Um, it's you might be unfortunate enough to take the first trade and be met with a loss instantly, but on the flip side, you might be fortunate enough to place a trade and be met with like the biggest profit of the strategy instantly, right? So that's a risk which you have to take. And again, I showed you how we managed the losses very well. And the strategy doesn't have just a single risk management. It has multi-dimensional risk management in terms of like inbuilt take profit stop loss. In terms of monthly profit quotas, loss quotas, in terms of in-trade profit quotas and loss quotas, which is for the more advanced versions, which we'll be publishing soon after full sellout of this version. But anyways, let's say you're convinced, at this point, because it is real, and I'm not making it up, and you want to see how this compares to everything else, every other asset class in the world to park your money in. So you can basically go to our Twitter, and maybe we'll have a lot more posts by the time you see this video, but you can definitely go to highlights and scroll down, and you can see that we asked Claude to basically do a deep dive of every single asset class in existence on the internet, to compare the performance of the strategy against it, right? We asked the same question to ChatGPT, and we asked the same question to Grok as well. And so let's see what they had to say, right? So if you look at the Claude's reply, you can check it out, right? So it goes over all the real estate assets in the world right now, and you can see that none of them come close to Sublime MRR when it comes to generating cash flow and market beating returns. Same thing for REITs and dividend stocks, right? So if you're planning to like save up a lot of money and then retire using dividend stocks or REITs, right? Because they pay out an income, well, this beats it, right? And you even get, and the thing about like a lot of these investments is that they might not be as liquid in terms of like you might have to sell the investment to access the capital, um, or you might have like penalties for taking out capital early. With Sublime MRR, it's not like that. From the ground up, it's designed in such a way that whatever money you make, you can freely spend it, right? Like the money which is generated by Sublime MRR is not money which is generated as a consequence of like taking your profits and then putting it back into the market to have like a bigger nest egg, right? It's not a compounding strategy; it's a cash flow strategy. So anything which is generated from it, you're free to spend it every single month. You're free to just keep it in your account. You're free to take it out whenever you want. And so there's a lot of flexibility when it comes to that strategy. And so as you can see, it's comparing it to every other source of income, from fixed deposit bonds, alternative investments, and none of it comes close to generating consistent returns, and that too with market beating return on investments, and not a single losing year for the entire history of its backtested data. So this is technically according to all of these AIs, best place to park your money on the internet, accessible to you right now, right? Like, this is deep research, by the way, and deep research from like 3 different AIs, which are supposed to be the best AIs on the planet as of recording this video. And the answers which they give you is the same, right? That nothing comes close to it. And when it comes to the fair market, this is the best place on the planet to park your money right now. And that's something crazy, isn't it? But then the most exciting part about all of this is, again, not the money which you make, but the community which you get access to. And so this is the community Discord, which you would get instant access to as soon as you make a purchase. And if you scroll down here, you'll see that there are a bunch of services here, right? You can access like lawyers if you're stuck in lawfare. You can access security, health services, wealth management services, lifestyle services, entertainment, PR services, emergency services. All of these things are going to be there, right? And take my word for it, it's not going to be, even if you have private lawyers right now, even if you have a private security firm right now, even if you can access a lot of these wealth management systems, using internet, using official bodies, this is not going to be unlike anything which is out there right now, because right after I finish launching Magic Money, I'm going to acquire a bunch of law firms and I'm going to acquire a bunch of security firms to pioneer brand new legal instruments. And I'm talking about like, trust funds which are, run by LLMs, which are registered as legal entities and things like that, right? And even in terms of security, I'm talking about like, a band like Fitbit, right, which monitors your heart rate. But as soon as, there's an anomaly detected, you immediately have like, drones parked across the entire world, which would be there for, your search and rescue, right? So things like that, right? Like, it's science fiction, until it's real. And a lot of the cash flow which is going to be generated from this business is going to be reinvested into creating these sort of high-tech services. And guess what? Get first movers access to them, and you also get access to an exclusive community for the exact strategy which you bought. And again, only 100 are going to be sold for each tier. And then you get like networking opportunities, you get to share your wins, you get knowledge base, you can get opportunities within the Discord itself if someone is like trying to like sell the sports car, or like if someone wants to like, someone wants to like, sell the company or things like that. You can definitely network and grow, right? And so that's the product, and that's the conclusion of this entire presentation. And so I hope this brings you a lot of clarity, and I hope it removes a lot of the hesitations which you might have had in terms of whether this is real, or whether you can trust it, or if it's worth buying, if it's worth the hassle. But if you're still not convinced, like, you're always welcome to start a chat with us on the official website, or to basically send us a direct message on our X account, and we'll be there to assist you, and we'll be there to answer any question which you might have. And we look forward to onboarding you and having you become a member of our community, and for really, just buying the ticket to a kind of spaceship for an awesome life, uh, which is also going to come with like a lot of breakthroughs and a lot of innovations down the road. Uh, and so, yeah, it's basically a ticket to be on a fabulous journey, which might just span across centuries and across different lifetimes and across the entire cosmos. And so we look forward to onboarding you, and we look forward to having you on the other side. We look forward to making your life magical, and in the process, we look forward to uh, giving birth to something which is truly cosmic in its scale, although it's starting out with such naive and humble beginnings, to say the least. So, thank you, and if you have any questions, if you need any further clarifications, we are here, and don't hesitate to get in touch. And I guess speak to you soon.